Hey, sorry for my late replies. Was doing homework at Jace's. Miss you.
Catfishing has been a problem since the internet was created. There are countless TV shows exposing the people behind their online personas. But there are times when deception online takes a darkly tragic turn. From a rogue cop's deadly troubled life to a twisted murder-for-hire scheme born from internet lies, these cases expose the sinister depths some will go to manufacture reality. Our final story will leave you horrified as a catfisher's manipulation drives their victim to do the unthinkable. First, the disturbing case of a former Virginia police officer who gained a teen's trust through deception before committing an unspeakable act of violence. It was a seemingly innocent online connection that spiraled into an unimaginable tragedy. In the summer of 2022, a 15-year-old girl from Riverside began talking to someone she thought was a 17-year-old boy on Instagram. He showered the teen with gifts, sending her jewelry, groceries, money, and gift cards. He paid for her food deliveries and helped her buy birthday presents for friends, claiming he had a well-paying job. But things took a sinister turn when he started pressuring her to send nude photos, making her feel deeply uncomfortable. After Halloween, the girl decided to end the relationship and blocked him on Instagram. She had no clue the person on the other side of the chat was, in fact, a 28-year-old sheriff's deputy, Austin Lee Edwards. And Edwards did not take the rejection well. Even though she blocked him, he still found a way to send a disturbing letter about ending his life. Alarm bells should have sounded then, but the brutal truth was still unfolding with unthinkable horror. On the day after Thanksgiving, just weeks after the breakup, Edwards set off on a 2,000-mile journey from Virginia to Riverside, California. What followed was an act so brutal and calculated that it defied comprehension. Edwards arrived at the girl's house just after 7 a.m., parking in a neighbor's driveway. Witness accounts would later say they saw a man wearing a trench coat and black fedora approaching the house carrying a duffel bag, but turned around twice. He returned 2 hours later with the intent to commit an unthinkable act of violence, posing as a detective investigating a case involving the exchange of lewd photographs. He convinced her grandmother to summon the girl and her mother, Brooke, spinning a tale about needing to question them. When the girl's mother arrived, she told the teen to stay in the car. Once she got inside the house, the murderous rampage unfolded in quick succession. Edwards brutally murdered the girl's mother, Brooke, and her grandparents, Mark and Cherie Winnick. He suffocated them by taping bags around their necks and tied up their arms and legs with duct tape. He then set the house ablaze, opening windows and doors to allow the flames to spread rapidly. As the teen who was outside entered the house, Edwards grabbed her and forced her into his car at gunpoint. Neighbors witnessed the horrific scene and alerted authorities, but Edwards had already made his getaway, with the terrified girl in tow. During the harrowing journey, the catfisher admitted to lying during the hiring process to become a police officer, claiming agencies need to do better backgrounds. He revealed his plan to take the girl to Virginia, where he had recently purchased a home in preparation for her captivity, blacking out the windows in preparation for her captivity. However, Edwards' deranged plans were derailed when police identified him through a neighbor's description and security footage. A high-speed chase ensued, with the 28-year-old firing at pursuing officers. Law enforcement closed in on the vehicle as the killer lost control of the vehicle. That's when the 15-year-old managed to escape, physically unharmed. Eventually, Edwards' reign of terror came to an end with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The gun he used was his service pistol, issued to him by the Washington County Sheriff's Office just 10 days before the killings.
It was a very disturbing crime scene. This guy is, or was, a monster. This guy's a pedophile. He's an online predator.
But how did such a troubled man gain access to a badge and a gun? Investigations would later reveal a sordid web of deceit and the flawed administrative system within law enforcement. Edwards had a deeply troubling past. Years before the Riverside killings, he had already exhibited a pattern of grooming and soliciting underage girls online for explicit content. In the mid-2010s, when he was 20, Edwards struck up an online sexual relationship with a 13-year-old girl, repeatedly pressuring her to send nude photos, despite knowing her age. Their interactions lasted around 2 years, with a cop manipulating the minor and threatening self-harm if she left him. In 2016, it would all come to a head when the then 14-year-old tried to break things off. According to reports, law enforcement was called out to the Edwards home after he tried to harm himself. He resisted medical aid and attempted to escape, threatening to kill his father and himself. An emergency custody order was issued, resulting in Edwards being admitted to a psychiatric facility. His gun license was also revoked as a result. Despite this incident, Edwards never disclosed it to the Virginia State Police during his hiring process. The agency claimed to have conducted a thorough background check, including a fingerprint-based criminal history examination, psychological testing, and a pre-employment polygraph. But in a staggering lapse, both the Virginia State Police and the Washington County Sheriff's Office failed to uncover the court order during background checks. This raised serious questions about how the 2016 incident was overlooked, allowing Edwards to become a law enforcement officer. In the following years, 2 lawsuits were filed, seeking a combined total of $150 million. The lawsuit alleges that Edwards' history should have prevented him from ever becoming a police officer, citing negligent hiring practices by the Washington County Sheriff's Office. As the legal battles unfold, one thing is certain. The internet has allowed predators to enter our homes uninvited. Denali Brehmer.
Please, parents, guardians, when you are talking to your children about the dangers of their online actions, please use us as a reference.
At just 18 years old, Denali Brehmer thought her dreams had come true when she met Tyler, a charismatic, self-made millionaire, online in the fall of 2018. Swept up in his tales of lavish riches and promises of a life in luxury, Brehmer felt hard for the mysterious stranger's online persona. But the shocking truth? Tyler was really 21-year-old Darin Schilmiller, a sadistic catfishing predator who had seduced the teen in order to manipulate her into committing the unthinkable. Unlike his fake persona, Schilmiller was broke, unemployed, and lived in his grandparents' basement in the small town of New Salisbury, Indiana. He was known in the town as an extremely shy loner with a very disturbing secret. The 21-year-old had an unmistakable obsession with obtaining explicit images of minors and infants. He persistently solicited mothers for illicit photos of their children, even using fake online dating profiles to dupe them.
She said at one point, using the name Austin, Schilmiller confessed, quote, "I have a problem I want to tell someone and I don't know how." And he then asked for pictures, she said, of her daughters during diaper changes as a condition of revealing the secret.
Law enforcement had previously investigated Schilmiller for these predilections in 2018, but no charges were ever filed. No one could have predicted what evil would brew beneath the surface during those years he escaped consequences. As their online communications intensified over months, an unspeakable murder-for-hire conspiracy was hatched. Schilmiller began grooming Brehmer to do the unthinkable, carry out a brutal sexual assault and killing that he could orchestrate from afar. The depraved offer? A staggering $9 million payday for her if she produced videos and photos documenting the entire grisly act for his viewing pleasure. But who could possibly be sacrificed for such a perverse fantasy? The answer came from within Brehmer's closest circle. Her best friend and confidant, 19-year-old Cynthia C.C. Hoffman. Hoffman had a bubbly personality and was described as someone who desperately wanted to feel a sense of belonging. According to her family, she went above and beyond to be a good friend, because having a strong social circle was extremely important to her. Intellectually, Hoffman operated at a 7th grade level, but proved herself to be extremely capable and hardworking. After high school, she attended a program focused on students with cognitive disabilities, transitioning from high school to community life. Her ultimate goals were to get her driver's license and have her father's old car as her own. But her trusting nature made her vulnerable to those who did not have her best interests at heart. Like Tyler, who believed Hoffman's trusting nature could easily be exploited, making her the ideal target for his sick scheme. But could Brehmer really be persuaded to betray someone so vulnerable for the promise of millions from a stranger she never met? Tragically, the answer is yes. In the weeks between May and early June 2019, she had recruited 4 young accomplices to assist with carrying out the carefully orchestrated murder. Her 19-year-old boyfriend, Caleb Leyland, 16-year-old Caden McIntosh, and 2 unnamed juveniles. The lucrative payout was an irresistible lure, with each co-conspirator promised $500,000 for their part. With the twisted blueprint in place, the next phase was luring Hoffman to her death. That day, Brehmer and McIntosh used Leyland's car to pick up the unsuspecting Hoffman from her home under the guise of a hike to the Thunderbird Falls. But the group's true intentions were as dark as the secluded trail they would soon lead their trusting friend down. The 3 ventured off the main path, following a route along the Eklutna River bank until they reached a clearing. It was there that the premeditated betrayal was unleashed when the pair violently turned on Hoffman. They bound her hands and feet with duct tape and wrapped tape around her head to muffle any screams. Then, using Brehmer's gun, McIntosh fired a fatal bullet into the back of Hoffman's skull. Her body was then dumped into the river. Even more shocking, Brehmer was texting and sending real-time videos and photographs of the harrowing events to Tyler. While Hoffman suffered unimaginable anguish in her final moments, Schilmiller was receiving a live-stream snuff film 4,000 miles away. In the hours after Hoffman's murder, attempts to cover their tracks were already underway. Brehmer concocted a fake story about dropping Hoffman off safely at a park in Anchorage and sent text from Hoffman's phone to mislead the victim's concerned family. The pair then drove elsewhere to destroy the evidence. They burned everything, from her phone to the murder weapon and bloodstained clothes. Then Brehmer deleted her damning communications with Tyler from her phone. As Hoffman's distraught father realized she never came home that night, frantic searches began. Suspicion quickly focused on Brehmer, who cunningly had been sending concerned texts to the family.
As I hope she comes home safely, she's my best friend. I'm starting to get worried. I know she will come home safe.
The break in the case came when Brehmer's estranged mom came forward with information about the night the teen was killed. She said her daughter and her friend made some shocking revelations.
He was very matter-of-fact about the whole thing, almost glib. When he told me about shooting Cynthia in the head and kicking her body into the water, he laughed. And I will never in my life forget that.
2 days after her murder, Hoffman's body was found along the riverbed. McIntosh quickly cracked under police interrogation, confessing to the cold-blooded murder-for-hire plot they'd all taken part in, and was arrested for first-degree murder. Brehmer admitted that McIntosh pulled the trigger, but initially denied any prior knowledge that the killing was planned. Her story rapidly unraveled, however, as investigators unearthed a shocking Snapchat video appearing to show her confessing about her role in the killing. After realizing that she had been catfished by Tyler, Brehmer later admitted to police that she had been solicited and paid by the catfisher to kill Hoffman. The final unraveling came from the most sickening source of all: the snuff films Schilmiller demanded as proof from his deadly pawns. These graphic video and photo artifacts of the murder stored on the conspirators' devices with the undoing that revealed his true identity. Hunted down and confronted, Schilmiller admitted to being Tyler all along, a deranged fantasist preying on vulnerable youth through fake identities. But even more abhorrent allegations of exploitation awaited. Evidence revealed that in the dark days after the murder, Schilmiller had blackmailed and coerced Brehmer into recording herself sexually assaulting underage girls, one as young as 8 or 9, to satisfy his sick appetite for further criminal acts. Investigators found evidence of the explicit videos shared with Schilmiller, leading to both of them being indicted on federal charges related to child pornography. As the legal systems on both state and federal levels meted out punishment over the years, the penalties were as harsh as the crime's grisly details. Brehmer, McIntosh, and Schilmiller were each condemned to 99 years behind bars for their roles in Hoffman's killing. Leyland received decades in prison as well for his part as an accomplice, plotting cold-blooded homicide purely for an obscene sum of money. Brehmer received a further 30-year jail term for the child pornography charges, while Schilmiller, who already pleaded guilty, will also receive no less than 30 years when he is eventually sentenced. In Tennessee, a bitter online feud, stoked by the fake identities and lies, exploded in fatal violence for a young couple.
Johnson County 911.
Honey, I need an ambulance bad, please.
Okay, what's going on?
Oh my God, there's no pulse on either one of them. They're white, they're kids, their baby's here.
How's the baby?
He's not crying, he's awake. Oh God.
Do you want to attempt to do CPR on any one of them?
They're both dead, it's too late.
In the sleepy town of Mountain City, violent crimes was virtually unheard of until this brutal double homicide shattered that peaceful facade.
There was 2 people that was inside the residence that had been shot in the head. I had never seen anything like this before. We normally have maybe 1 murder every 3-4 years.
The 2 victims were 36-year-old Billy Payne and his 23-year-old fiancée, Billie Jean Hayworth.
Billie Jean, she was small package, big punch. She had a great, big personality. Bill Payne was very charismatic. His personality definitely matched hers. It was very obvious to see that they were meant for each other.
The killings came as a brutal shock to the small, tight-knit community of around 2,500. The violent crime would soon unveil a web of deception so twisted it would shake the small town of Mountain City to its core. But what kind of monster could commit such a heinous act? The answer may surprise you. It came from the most unlikely of all places, a feud that started with a simple click of the mouse. This is the story of how a social media rivalry spiraled into an unthinkable betrayal and brutal double homicide. At the center of it all was the Potter family. Jenelle, a socially awkward 31-year-old loner who had never left home or held a job. And her parents, Barbara and Buddy, strict disciplinarians who kept their daughter sheltered from the world.
Don't be out past, 12 o'clock at night. No smoking, no drinking, no partying, stuff like that.
Little did they know that Janelle's loneliness had taken her down a dark path. One that would eventually implicate them in an unforgivable act of violence. At 30 years old, Jenelle stood apart in this unassuming family, a socially awkward loner who relied entirely on her overprotective parents. With a childlike voice and a towering 6-foot frame, she had endured merciless bullying through high school. Shunned and resentful, Jenelle retreated into the fantasies of online life. In 2009, she made friends with Tracy Greenwell, who introduced Jenelle to her circle of friends, including her brother, Billy Payne, and cousin, Jamie Curd, who Jenelle would later secretly become involved with. She was finally fitting in, and Billy's casual kindness sparked an intense infatuation within her. Soon, the two became Facebook friends. But when Billy started dating Billie Jean Hayworth later that year, Jenelle reportedly started receiving vicious anonymous messages online.
Just that I was a bad person. I was horrible. Threatened to get raped.
Must have been pretty scary.
Yes.
Jenelle was convinced that Hayworth, Payne, and their friends were behind the cyberbullying. She accused the couple and their friends of the online abuse, claiming they threatened to rape her and harassed her with prank calls and drive-bys. But in reality, Jenelle was tormenting them with her unrelenting fixation. Jenelle had a long history of escalating online feuds. Court records would later paint a disturbing picture of a woman consumed by her perceived wrongs against her on social media platforms. Her unhinged behavior led multiple women to seek legal protection from her. After repeated harassing calls from her and online and verbal abuse coming from her parents, all because they had unfriended her on Facebook. The extent of Potter's obsession was further highlighted by her own attempts to obtain restraining orders against 2 women in 2009, accusing them of stalking her for over a year. In one instance, she claimed one of the alleged stalkers had removed her from her favorite people section on her MySpace profile, sparking her paranoia. When Hayworth and Payne brought a son into the world, Jenelle's jealousy and online obsession turned even darker.
Talked about how bad they partied and they were on drugs and, just all kinds of lies. I mean, it just got worse.
That she wished that Bill and Billie Jean and that damn baby would die.
At the same time, the Potter family started receiving emails from a shadowy character called Chris. He claimed to be a CIA operative intent on protecting Jenelle from the evil threat Hayworth and Payne posed to the family. Through a relentless barrage of hundreds of emails, Chris wove tales of the couple's sinister intentions to brutalize and kill Jenelle. The emails from Chris grew increasingly horrific, with tales of planned assassinations, kidnappings, and even murder, if her tormentors weren't stopped. Believing he was protecting their daughter, the parents placed their unwavering trust in the CIA operative. The Potters became convinced their family's lives were in grave danger, and paranoia and fear consumed them completely. And this dangerous delusion was about to turn into a brutal reality on one fateful winter night. In the early morning hours, Buddy and Jenelle's secret boyfriend, Jamie, drove to the couple's home to confront the perceived threats. What happened next was an act of sickening brutality. Buddy shot Payne point blank and slashed his throat, while Jamie fired the bullet that killed Hayworth as she cradled her infant son. The young baby, who was covered in her mother's blood, was the sole survivor of the grisly scene. When police began investigating the shocking crime, suspicion quickly turned to the Potter family, following their prior conflicts with the victims.
Do you know of anybody that would hurt them, want to hurt them?
No, actually I don't. I feel bad about the situation because I didn't want no harm on them. They've been harassing me in my driveway, on our property, and then yesterday morning when I got on Facebook is when I found out. And, I'm sorry it happened, but, that's all I could tell you is they have been harassing the living crap out of me.
Why would they be harassing you?
It came out to be a jealousy thing. They said I was too pretty.
As the web of deception started unraveling, Jamie soon confessed to his role and implicated Jenelle's father, Buddy.
Interesting, Jamie. I know you know a few of those things. I don't. Tell us the truth. Who shot him? He who. Who had the gun? Hey.
While police get ready to bring Buddy in for questioning, Jamie makes a startling inquiry.
This is the CIA here. CIA? No.
What seemed like a bizarre question to investigators would all fall into place over the following days. While Buddy originally denied any involvement, he too breaks down after a grueling interrogation, hinting at the motive behind the killings.
People plotting to get your daughter in the restroom and murder her. They wanted to rape her because she's a virgin. And just so much.
Buddy, along with Jamie, is arrested for first-degree murder, but the real mastermind would only be uncovered much later. Authorities executed a search warrant at the Potter home, unearthing an arsenal of weapons, printed photos of the victims, and 3 bags of shredded documents. It would be another year before the final pieces of the investigation would fall into place. That's when the forensics uncovered the shocking truth. After piecing together the shredded documents, police discover emails from a fictitious CIA agent named Chris. FBI analysis painstakingly reconstructed the bags of shredded documents, revealing the enigmatic CIA operative Chris's messages to the family. The emails all originated from within the Potter household, and, even more disturbingly, were all fabricated and written by Jenelle herself to manipulate her parents. With Jenelle pulling all the strings, she found a way to weaponize her parents' and boyfriend's protective love to kill the object of her affection and the woman he loved. Jenelle and her mother, Barbara, were arrested in August 2013, nearly a year and a half after the double homicide. Following a tense trial in 2015, Jenelle Potter was convicted of masterminding the murders and sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms. Her father, Marvin, received the same, while Jamie Curd struck a plea deal for 25 years after testifying against Jenelle. Barbara pleaded guilty to facilitation of murder and is eligible for parole in 2028. Police could never find any evidence that Payne or Hayworth had ever threatened Jenelle or her family. In Australia, an unthinkable betrayal comes from the victim's inner circle. Renae Marsden was just 20 years old, but she dreamed of the perfect wedding and building a family of her own. In the weeks before her death, she spent hours scrolling through bridal websites, envisioning her special day. Despite her small stature, she had a huge personality that easily filled a room with her loud, infectious laughter. On the evening of August 5th, 2013, Renae headed out to have a dinner with friends. But she never came home that night. It was the last time her loved ones would ever see her alive. Renae's mother alerted the police after receiving a heartbreaking text.
She said to me that she loved me and she was sorry for what she was about to do. And I needed to look after the rest of the kids in the family.
Later that evening, her abandoned car was discovered at the Gap in Sydney. An eerie final message was written on the window. Police determined she had taken her own life there. However, her parents, Mark and Teresa Marsden, sensed something more sinister from the very start. Refusing to accept their cause of death ruling, her parents launched their own investigation into her disappearance and final days. What they would uncover was an elaborate work of fiction, which they believe ultimately led to their daughter's death. In the months before she went missing, Renae's family and friends had watched her fall for a young man named Brayden Spiteri. Renae's old school friend Camila Zeidan had introduced the two over text in November 2011. But the only problem was that it was a long-distance relationship, and Renae and Brayden had yet to meet in person. After hitting it off over text messages, Renae was really excited to finally meet her new romantic interest. But in early 2012, she received devastating news. Brayden had been in a horrific motorcycle accident that killed his friend and was now in Goulburn prison, facing manslaughter charges related to the incident. This came as a heavy blow to Renae, but she had already fallen hard for Brayden while he was serving his time. In fact, she was so smitten that she had his name tattooed on her chest just 3 months after they started chatting. Searching for answers after the daughter's disappearance, the Marsdens reached out to her friend Camila, who had introduced the two. They had been unable to contact Brayden and asked for her help. Camila, however, avoided the questioning, saying she had spoken to him and that he was also hurting because everyone was blaming him. But when they told her they gave Brayden's phone number to the police, Camila became frantic, demanding they get the number back. That's when alarm bells started going off in her parents' heads. Yet, without evidence of a crime, an investigation would not continue. Taking matters into their own hands, the Marsdens started piecing together the last months of Renae's life. Phone records showed over 11,400 texts exchanged between her and Brayden over a 3-month period, leading up to her death. It was the first sign that her relationship with this man was far more intense than they knew.
When we got the phone back off the police, that we actually got the messages downloaded ourselves and went through them all, and we found a whole lot of
there was phone
dialogue.
numbers, so I started ringing phone numbers, got onto a wedding photographer.
Wow.
Found that Renae had made applications to the consulate to see if Brayden had been in prison, was allowed to travel overseas for the honeymoon. So the wedding was well advanced. We didn't know anything about it.
Then came a more shocking discovery. Goulburn Prison had no record of an inmate named Brayden Spiteri. As the digital evidence was unpacked, an astonishing reality emerged. No records or traces of Brayden existed anywhere. He appeared to be an entirely made-up persona to catfish Renae. But who was behind this fabricated identity? After analyzing Renae's call logs, the Marsdens uncovered a horrific pattern. A lot of Brayden's text messages had come from the same phone tower as messages received from Camila. That's when the sickening truth set in. Brayden Spiteri and Camila were the same person. As the horrific details poured out, a pathological portrait began taking shape. Finally confronted, Camila had no choice but to come clean. It was she who had elaborately catfished her friend for nearly 2 years as Brayden, through texts and a Facebook profile to forge an intense psychological bond. However, even with evidence seized and a confession, no criminal charges were filed, as catfishing is not illegal in Australia.
Well, personally, I think it beggars belief. There were 20,000, 30,000 text messages, and when you troll through all those messages, which Teresa and I have done, the extent of the whole thing was mind-boggling. Renae was manipulated, she was deceived, she was lied to, she was controlled, it was coercive. Moral, ethically, it doesn't matter. It should be illegal in our opinion.
The closest thing to trial the Marsdens could get was a coronial inquest. But in return for her testimony, Camila would receive immunity from all prosecution. 7 years after Renae's death, Camila would finally have to answer as to why she had so viciously tricked her friend. But no one was ready for her answer.
Camila Zeidan admitted to the coroner Brayden had never existed, claiming she and Renae had made him up together. "We were never going to be accepted. She wasn't allowed to be around me. We made the character. That way she was allowed to see me," the 27-year-old told the inquest.
Her statement infuriated Renae's emotional mother.
Renae's there. I trusted you. You came into my home. My home, I trusted you. You could have told me any time.
As messages spanning years were read out in court, they painted a vastly different picture. The evidence revealed a pattern of obsessive and controlling behavior exhibited by Camila. In emails from 2008, when the two women were reportedly dating in high school, Camila wrote to Renae saying she would own her and that there would be no way to escape, because only Camila truly loved her. Even more chillingly, evidence suggested Renae's friendship with the manipulative Camila may have even contributed to a previous suicide attempt in 2012.
Renae confided in one of my nieces that Camila had pinned her up against the wall and made sexual advances towards her. I think from the onset, Renae was frightened of Camila. Camila's much bigger than Renae, and Renae didn't know how to handle that.
Fed up with her so-called friend's obsessive behavior, Renae ended their friendship while Camila was away on a month-long holiday.
She said to me the last straw was they were driving down the road and Camila tried to take the steering wheel out of her hands while she was driving. Camila wanted to kill her. Pulling of the hair, punching at the head, that was it. It was done. She said, "I'm done." She said she went psycho one too many times.
The Marsdens believe this rejection prompted Camila to seek revenge. According to evidence reviewed at the inquest, Renae's devastating last day began with an explosive argument between her and Brayden. She was expecting news about his court case and hoped he would be released. Instead, Brayden ended their relationship, leaving Renae devastated. Shortly after, Renae placed a call to Goulburn Prison. The call was just 90 seconds long, and it's unclear whether she found out the inmate, Brayden Spiteri, did not exist. Renae's mother also received messages from Brayden that day, claiming that her daughter was threatening to harm herself.
So she received a text message that afternoon, and that the relationship was over. She said everything's fine and there's nothing to worry about.
Then you got a text message from Brayden.
So I received a text message from Brayden not long after Renae got home, saying I needed to sort my daughter out. She was threatening to kill herself.
While Teresa asked Renae about the messages, Renae assured her that she was fine, cryptically saying, "You don't have to worry about it anymore. I found out what he's all about." Renae left the house to meet up with friends. Instead, she undertook a 50-minute drive to the Gap, exchanging several text messages with Brayden until he stopped replying. Renae then sent farewell texts to Camila, her mother, and finally Brayden. She threw her phone into the ocean and stepped off the cliff. Tragically, her body was never found. Camila has never revealed the details of what was said in those 91 final text messages. Information that possibly could have led to the evidence police so sorely needed to prosecute her criminally for Renae's death. Have you heard of any catfish killers you'd like for me to cover? Let me know in the comments below, or you can email them to me using the address on my channel.